Welcome to the Building in Decentraland video series. These videos are recordings of the live sessions of the inaugural class offered by the VR Academy, which is a school within Decentraland University. My name is Fravel, and I'm the instructor of this course. These videos are largely unedited recordings of the live class sessions. The descriptive text provided below this video includes information about Decentraland, a virtual reality on the blockchain, the Decentraland University and its schools, including the VR Academy, and the course materials for this course, including the lessons and assignments. I hope that you enjoy studying these materials and that they help you to become a very capable builder in Decentraland. I want to start by saying thank you for all of you window users' patience and struggles with the problems with Zeit now. They have been thoroughly reported to Decentraland, and they consider them very urgent because they want that stuff working for the game jam, which is how people will submit stuff. Most of the Decentraland staff uses Macs. Some of them use Linux consoles. They do have some Windows machines for testing, but this is something they had not caught. So we have given them lots of information. I've given them the polling results, etc. They're well aware of it, and the lead of their development team considers it very high urgency to fix it. In the meantime, I've put some notes in the chat about other ways you can complete assignment 6, and I'm going to be very lenient about that with Windows users because it's just been a struggle. So you can, probably the best thing to do is just for assignment 6, if you're on Windows, is just deploy a scene that only has primitive objects in it, no GLBs or material textures. The problem is some combination of what you get when you do the DCL export, what's in that directory, is not compatible with all web servers. In particular, it's not compatible with Zeit now with regard to the loading of external files. Lutez seems to have found that that there's a problem on at least one other web server too. I do know that some of them work, so I'll probably be doing some more testing and giving Decentraland some additional information this weekend. So enough on that. I see a lot of progress, a lot of really great work being done. I just want to tip my hat to everybody for all their strong efforts to learn these skills and to make progress. So thank you all. Today we're going to talk about what you have to do to deploy a scene to real land in Decentraland. I just want to let you know that Decentraland has provided a patch of land in the southwest of the world, of the city, for us to use as the university sandbox. It is a loan to the university, and I don't know how long that loan will go, but it'll go, we've agreed that it'll go at least through March of 2020. And I will loan individual parcels out of that pool to students who've met the requirements. As I mentioned in the chat, the requirements are that you've completed through lesson 4 and that you've provided me with your Ethereum address in a private message. We'll be talking about why you need an Ethereum address in this class. The loan will be either until we need to recycle the sandbox for a later class, or which right now there's none scheduled, so it may go clear until March, the end of March. And it could go longer if we don't have another class and they let us have the land longer. I'm not going to arbitrarily take it back. I'll only recycle the loaned parcels as needed. So we'll be talking about all that today. Does anybody have any review questions from previous lessons before we start into lesson 7? Well, if you think of some, go ahead and jump in, and I am going to try to watch the group chat, although I don't see it all the time. Deploying land to a scene to land is kind of similar to DCL start. But DCL start starts up the scene in a local web server on your machine. It's a private web server that can be seen by you. DCL deploy, which is the command for pushing that scene up into the world onto land, doesn't run it on your local machine. It puts it up in the world, and then you point your browser up there to see it. And to be able to push a scene to land successfully, you have to do a few things. And we'll go through them in detail. But to summarize, you've got to be logged into MetaMask with the right address that owns or has rights to that land. And you have to have your scene.json file set up correctly. So let's just go ahead and go through that stuff. I'm just going to actually kind of work through this document today because it has the details. You can't deploy to somebody else's land. You can only deploy to your own land unless the owner of that land has given you a role with permissions to update their land. That's how the land for the class sandbox is going to work. Decentraland lent me an estate of land by assigning one of my wallets the update manager role. There's various roles you can assign to a piece of land for people to work with it without owning it. And update manager is one. Update operator is another. That allows you to update parcels in an estate. And then there's a parcel by parcel specific operator called land update operator. These are fairly technical things. To set them up, you need to run functions on I need to run functions on a smart contract. And I've done the research and the setup and got all the numbers and everything lined up to begin doing that with these parcels for you. And I will try to get started on that this afternoon. I just want to be very careful because I don't want to think that I've done the right thing and then you can't get to your land. So I'll be posting the Discord IDs and coordinates of the land that I've allocated to you, one parcel to each of you. I'll be posting that list. It's kind of a directory for our sandbox. I'll be posting it in the chat. I have it finished. So, so you either have to own the land or you have to have a right to update it. To identify yourself as it's me, I own this land when I'm up, deploying, or it's me and I have the rights to do so that have been granted to me, you have to use MetaMask. I believe that there's other Web3 wallets that you could use, but MetaMask is really the most widely used one. I'm totally unfamiliar with Dapper. I believe it could also be used, and I know there are one or two others, but MetaMask is well proven, and it's the one I use. It's the one I'll demonstrate today. You also need to set up your scene.json file. Up till now, we've been ignoring it because when you're building a scene, it doesn't seem to really matter if you put content beyond the one parcel that you get in the DCL init. So when you first do a DCL init, you get, let's see if we can find one here. We're going to make a scene for doing some demonstration today. So if I do a DCL init in here, oh, wait a second. Let me make sure that I have the latest. Let me just make sure I have the latest here. I've been doing experiments with this bug, and I may not have the very latest. I'm going to actually uninstall Decentraland and reinstall it. I know I have the latest one. All right, and then I'll do a DCL init here in this demo directory. And it looks like a pretty normal directory. You see that there's scene.json in there. I want to make sure that this says latest. It does, okay, for the STK ECS dependency. Let's look at the scene.json file. This is the default one you get from DCL init. You can give the scene a name. I never touch this, but this would control the icon you see at the top of the browser. You can put the name of a district here, a company. You can put anything you want. You can leave it blank. You can put your email address in. This information is available if you do a DCL info command. We can maybe look at that a little later. Owner is a retired field. It used to have your MetaMask wallet address in it, but they are using a different approach now. They still have it in here, but you don't need to do anything with it. This is what's really important to get right. And by the way, in terms of getting this file right, you sure don't want to mess with the syntax and break the indenting, the parentheses, the commas, the curly brackets, etc. It's got to be, you got to be careful when you edit it. But this is a square brackets in JSON is an array. This array has one element in it for the scene. One element is the one parcel that the scene lives on. And the base parcel is the parcel that forms the origin for the coordinate system in the scene. So the southwest corner of the base parcel is 0, 0, 0 in your scene. I'll say it again. The southwest corner on the ground in your base parcel is the meter's origin for the entire scene. So I almost always have my base parcel be the southwestmost parcel in the scene so that all of the position coordinates for all the objects are positive to the north, to the east of that for X and to the north of that for Z. You don't have to have the base parcel be at the southwest corner. I think maybe a few people sometimes put it in the middle so that your 0, 0 coordinates are in the middle of your scene, but then you have to also deal with just thinking about positive and negative coordinates. So I just, as a matter of course, use the southwestmost parcel. So let's look at what the scene looks like without putting anything in it other than the default content. And what we haven't really talked about very much, but when you open a scene, the rendering engine renders a gray grid on the ground that fills all the parcels that you specified in your scene.json file. Oops. So that's a one parcel platform. That platform is just a little bit below 0 height. So if you put like a plane or a thin box or you know, a GLB on the ground, it doesn't actually quite touch that gray grid. And then the world grid is even farther down. You can see it from perspective as I move this. It's almost maybe another half a meter down. something like that. But if I go back here to this, to the scene.json and add a second parcel, parcels have to be listed here with commas between them. I'm going to put a parcel to the north of the original parcel as well. The second parameter is the north direction in parcel coordinates. So I save that, and the latest version of the SDK reloads the scene when you touch and save one of the TypeScript or JSON files. So now you see that there's two parcels here. If I wanted to make 4 parcels, I could do this. Notice I don't put a comma after the last. It might even tell me that that's wrong if I do. Yeah, it's a little underlined squiggle red, and I have a red dot over here. TypeScript seems to be forgiving about that, but regular JavaScript and JSON are not. So comma separated, but not comma terminated list. Notice that my base parcel is still 0, 0. Save that. Now I have 4 parcels. It happens very quickly on your local machine that it just actually reloaded the file before I got back to it. Let's see if I can go fast enough to see it happen. Nope, it's very fast now. Okay, so save, go back, it's already there. For a more complex scene, it takes a little longer to reload. But anyway, you get the idea. If I were to make one of the other parcels the base parcel, let's say I make the second parcel the base parcel, that one there to the north, what do you think will happen? If the base parcel is the coordinate origin in the scene, I've changed which parcel southwest corner is the origin of positions in the scene. So what will happen, of course, is that square that's rotating, its position now will be relative to the parcel one to the north. And as we see, it's up there. You get the idea? So now the next thing is that you don't own, no landowner other than Decentraland owns the middle parcel in the world. So although the default scene in DCL init is at 0, 0, in the land, of course, in Genesis City, 0, 0 is in the center of the central plaza, and you don't have rights to deploy there. So if I were to try to deploy there, it would say you don't have the rights to do so. In fact, now let's first deploy successfully. So I'm going to go to the Decentraland marketplace. That's market.decentraland.org. Let me kind of take you through this from the beginning. If you go to market.decentraland.org, it's a map of the world, and it's where you can buy parcels. And you start by saying get started, and you sign in, and you have to connect with MetaMask or some Web3 provider. So I'll sign in with MetaMask. I had previously actually signed in to MetaMask, which is sitting right here. I got a little 1 here. The reason why that's important to notice is because I just clicked here and brought my browser over the top of MetaMask pop-up, and I don't see it, but look, it says I have something. So if I click here, it comes back up. And it's waiting for me to, it's waiting for me to approve. There's various things that can pop up in MetaMask. You can actually have a pop-up because of paying somebody or something for something. You can get a pop-up for signing a signing request. This particular one comes up and says connect. You want to be very careful that when you see something pop up in MetaMask, you think carefully, why did that pop up? Because somebody can create a DApp which says you know, I would like you to pay me 30 cents for this thing. And when you pop it up and you see it's not 30 cents, it's, you know, $1,000, and it raids your wallet. You want to be very careful with these pop-ups and what you do with them. It's saying the marketplace wants to confirm that it's me, that associate my identity with this session. This is safe, and I click connect. And now what I see is land that's for sale, recently placed for sale. And I see an atlas of the world with a mini map over here of the whole world. And it shows right here that I am sitting in the middle of the world. I guess one of the reasons this thing is really useful in this context is that if I wanted to deploy to some of my land, I can find it on the atlas because it's orange when I'm logged in as me. I have a little square of land here. I think I may have already put something on it, but let's make a 4-parcel scene and put it there. So I'm hovering over this, and I can see the coordinates. The southwest corner is -527. So if I put -527 as the base parcel, I could now do all this manually too. -527. Scene to the north of that is -528. I can confirm that over here. One parcel to the east would be -427, -428. By the way, I've made a tool for building this. If your scene gets big, this can be very hard to do manually and very error prone. So I've made a tool for generating this list. It's a little web tool, and I'll provide that. I think I already have somewhere in the document, but I call it an estate generator. It generates a list of parcels based on the 4 edges of the parcel. So anyway, if I save this, I'm going to come back and look at my scene, which is here. Nope, here. Where'd it go? Well, it's not here anymore. Now it's up at -527. So even though I'm in the preview, by the way, when you type in coordinates in the URL, you can use a comma. It will change it to @2c, but %2c, sorry. So the %2c is the ASCII representation for a comma. That's just why they do that. So now I'm at the southwest corner of the scene. And if I was going to do a lot of development in this mode where I've already set my scene.json file up, I would keep a URL to here so I can get back here easily. I don't know that DCL start has gotten fixed again to, for a while it was, if I recall, it was smart enough to get your browser pointing in the right place based on your scene.json, but they lost that in version 6, and I don't know that they've, ooh, look, they have, it's back. That's good. So you don't need to worry about the bookmark. Seems to be picking up the scene.json again. So that's good. So let's try deploying this since I own that land. Let me see what I had put on that land already, just for grins. See what I'm going to be overriding. So if I want to see that land, it's what's -527. Just pausing a moment so you can look at the way the URL is formed. You do have to have beta access to see these scenes on Explorer. If you have not yet been granted Explorer access and did not send me your email address, please do, and I'll ask them to prioritize getting you in, although it could take a week or two. Otherwise, other people are being invited in the order in which they signed up for an avatar. Signed up for an identity through avatars.decentraland.org. But I think it's taking like 6 weeks or more. So anyway, let's see what I had on that land, if anything. I may have put a building there or some scene. Oh, this is a lovely scene. Maybe I don't want to. Welcome. Maybe I don't want to overwrite this one. Let me see if I have another piece of land. I know whose scene that is. It's actually one of the student scenes. I want to go back to Marketplace. Is that here? Yes. Maybe I don't have anything here. -5, 133. Let me just say it again. -5, -133. Here? Yeah. The latest version of Decentraland seems to either take longer to load or it simply gives you this black screen for a longer time during the loading process. So the scene is more thoroughly loaded. So it looks like I have a available piece of land here that I've not deployed to before. So let's deploy here. -5, -133. So I'll go back to here. And I'm going to show you the use of that tool for creating the scene. I'm going to take just a moment here and make sure it's available to all of you right away. Where's the document? Sorry for that little pause here. I just want to I think maybe the right place to put it would be soon after this. So if I go there, it's a little web app running on my server that you put in 4 coordinates. The west and eastmost parcels for X and the north and southmost for Y. The parcel coordinates are Y, even though the direction is Z in meters. So back to our, I'm going to pull this down so it's on a different window. Back to here. This is a little silly when you only have 4 because it's not too hard to do it manually, but when you have a lot, it's much easier if you have a tool. So the first thing it's asking for is the westmost, which is -5. And of course the eastmost is -4. And the southmost is negative 133, and negative 132. So it gives me my list, which I'll put in here. And I'll take the first one here and make sure it's down here. I already did, but I could copy it there if I hadn't done that. This tool gives you the southwest most corner first in the list. So you just take the first one and put it down here. Anyway, useful tool. And I think that we'll find that the scene viewer, which is maybe this one, maybe I killed the scene. Should show me a rotating square on that preview. And now if we Control C over here and say TCL deploy, this is the root of all evil. This is how you get your scene up onto the land. And it asks you, do you want to upload this swap-in2 file scene? Well, what the two files are game.ts turned into a JavaScript file, game.js, and the scene.json file. For a real scene that has GLBs and stuff, this list will be longer. And I'm happy with that. Yes, I want to do that. And it says the signing app is ready. Well, it hasn't opened it quite yet, but then it does. And it couldn't find any wallet, so it says reconnect, please. Since I'm the owner of this, it shows the base parcel that it's going to deploy to. Shows my wallet, everything looked good. What I need to do is down here is to say sign and deploy. Now this pops up for a signature request. Again, it's not asking for any money. Right now, Decentraland is making deployment free because they're running it on their own content servers. And it says content was successfully signed and is being uploaded. You can close this window and check the CLI, the command line interface, for more information. So I can close that and go back to here. And because it's a small scene, by the time I got back here, it's already deployed. What you'll notice for a large scene is that it may say deployment complete for a few seconds before it gives your cursor back in the console window. And I always just wait until it comes back to ready for another command. And now, if I well, let's just grab these right here. Actually, does it give me a URL for it here? I didn't even look to see if it does. No, it doesn't directly. So if I go to Explore, actually, I was already there. Do I need to reload? What's going on? Oh, maybe the square was there. There were so many other things around. Maybe I just didn't notice. But since I was already looking there, I think you do have to reload when you've updated a scene, because you've already downloaded the scene into your browser. So there it is. And I see that we have some of our classmates here. So kind of a boring scene, but you get the idea. Now let me show you what happens when you don't do it right. So for example, let's say, I'm just going to add another one more to the north up there. And now if I try to do a deploy, it will rightfully say that I don't have the right to do that. And it'll do that on that pop-up browser page. Error, you don't have permissions to update the following land that are part of the scene for -131, which would be like this little square right here in the road. And indeed, I don't have the rights to do that. Notice it says you don't have permissions. It doesn't say you don't own it. I just want to go back and say you can upload to land that you own, or you can upload to land that you've been given the update rights to by the owner. You can do that in the marketplace. You don't have to know everything about how to use the Solidity contract and make a call on it stuff. But if you go to the marketplace, I'm going to have to look here for a moment to find it. My land. Let's just pick a parcel somewhere. Well, let's just use this one here. If I click here, I can say permissions. So with regard to this particular parcel right here, I can give a permission to another person to operate it. In other words, to run DCL deploy on it. It doesn't keep you from doing it. You can still deploy to it also. If you do, you'll overwrite their deployment. If they deploy because they have this permission, it'll overwrite what you've written. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when you overwrite a scene. If you overwrite the entire scene, it just replaces it. If you overwrite part of a scene, either because you're deploying to a smaller area that was within that scene, or you're deploying to a scene that overlaps with the old one, the old one will disappear and the new one will appear. And that's not because the old one isn't still attached to the land. It's just that the whole scene is not attached to the land anymore. And their renderer is smart enough to figure out that the scene has been partly overwritten, and a partly overwritten scene would be ambiguous as to how to render it, because you're going to render things that may overlap in space with something else. So the logic that they use is if you overwrite part of a scene, the old scene in its entirety disappears and the new scene appears. So that's how that works. I'm going to go back to my document because I think I've covered most of what I meant to cover today. And we have some time for maybe some questions. Here we go. Let's just run through these steps here again. You develop your scene, usually very likely at 0, 0. At some point, you edit the scene JSON file to comply with the destination parcels that you're going to be deploying to. Your URL will change from being at 0, 0 to someplace else. We found out today that DCL start picks up the base parcel from the scene.json now and points you to the right place. So DCL start just works. And then you can go ahead and deploy it to a web server or site now if you're working with a team, or for some reason you want people to be able to see a scene before you put it up in the world. For example, some testers, beta testers or something. And then when you're ready, you deploy it to the land, you log into MetaMask, you set your account to the right account that owns or has rights to the land. You run DCL deploy, browser window pops up. If you have an error, the window will tell you. Otherwise, you scroll down and press the button. I think it says sign and deploy or something like that. You close the browser window and watch the console window, see that it completes, and then you go visit your scene, and that's it. Yes. MetaMask, if you haven't installed it already, if you don't already have an Ethereum address, MetaMask is a Chrome or Firefox. I think Brave has it too. It's a plugin. So you go get it from that browser's store. It has a logo that is a little fox. Be careful not to get a lookalike that isn't MetaMask from MetaMask.io. You can always go to MetaMask.io and get the Chrome extension from here or other places, then you know you have the right one when you're in the store. It seems like the Chrome store, which is one I'm familiar with, is pretty good about pulling down ones that are fakes. I don't know what their process is, so I wouldn't totally trust it. If you're not sure, you can just go here and click there. It'll take you to the extension, and you know, if this is the right one. And so then you add it to Chrome. I've already added it. It'll appear up here, and you click it, and the first time you use it, you'll get this, you know, sign in here. Actually, the first time you use it, you're going to be asked to set up a new address, a new Ethereum address, and it'll give you a 12-word passphrase or secret that you want to store someplace that's very secret and very safe, maybe in a trunk in Hobbit Town or something. And the reason why you want to save that is that if you ever, you know, lose your machine, break your browser, have to restart, you know, reset your machine, you're going to want to, when you start MetaMask, say, no, I already have an account. I want to bring it in, and you put that 12-word phrase back in, and your account will be all hooked back up to the Ethereum network properly. You won't lose anything. Remember, your tokens and coinage are not stored in your wallets. They're stored on the blockchains, but your wallet is how you access it. It's how you know about how to get to it. It's kind of like your debit card. If you lose your debit card, you go to the bank and say, I need a debit card, and you prove who you are. Well, the way you do that with Ethereum is to keep your 12-word password safe. And then just reinstall MetaMask and put it back in. MetaMask can also, I'm going to see if you can see this. It also, at the time you set up, it asks for a password. I'm not talking about the 12-word phrase, but just a password to use it locally. And it stores all the credentials, everything it needs, encrypted on your, I think your browser cache, or browser storage. I'm not sure exactly how it does it, but it encrypts it using that password. And you can have multiple accounts. If you get really involved in doing a lot of work with land and teams and districts and stuff, you may end up with a lot of different accounts. So this is the one that owns most of my land. So you have to, where was I going here? Just trying to explain how all this works, I guess. You have to make sure you're logged into the right one. And you can import an account. If somebody says, I'm giving you access to an account to use with me to deploy stuff to the land, they could create a new account, and then they could give you credentials to that, and then make that give that one a role, and you two could both work on it together. And then later they could deploy a different account to that role and remove you from it. That's one scenario where you might import an account. The other is you may have created an account somewhere else other than in MetaMask, like in Mu or Jax or some other wallet, or there's reasons why you might want to import account. And when you import an account, you have to provide some secrets from that other account. When you create an account, it adds another one to both of these would add another account to your list. And it also has the ability to use a hardware wallet through here. Let's see if I have any questions here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ember has put some comments in. They're helpful. Thank you. Any questions?
I actually had a question. So I know with the scene limitation uh, right now, so if you were to try to deploy a scene that had or that exceeded the limitations, it probably wouldn't render it.
Over time, the way that's worked is different. Back when they had the Babylon JS renderer, um, the previewer itself would complain when you try to do a DCL start. It would put a flashing red and blue box around the object that was sticking out of the scene. You're not just talking about scene boundaries, but you're talking about height limits and triangle limits and things like that. I don't know when it is that the latest version of stuff tells you when you're breaking a rule. I haven't tried. It might happen in DCL start. It might happen at deploy time. It might happen at render time in the world. I'm not sure. If anybody knows, jump in. We could try and experiment with it if we wanted to spend a little time on that, but maybe a little bit later. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, we have a short class today, I think. I do. I am a little curious about what happens these days when you break scene limits. So um, let's experiment with that a little bit. Let's start with. Oh, I have a broken linker here because the scene was invalid. So I'm just going to kill that session. The scene here is invalid. I'm going to take the last parcel off. Back to here. I guess the first thing to try is putting something outside the boundaries, and then another thing is putting it too high, and then other thing is putting something that has too many triangles. I think those would be three interesting things to test, and I don't know the answers right now. So let's give it a try. I'm going to uh, I'm going to get rid of some of the. Actually, the scene limit is so big that I don't really want to try to find it, but that way. Okay, so actually, maybe what I'll do is make it a little easier on myself by going to my library and my scene base and I'm going to move a bunch of stuff over that just makes it easier for me to do this more quickly. So I'll compare there and experiments and deploy, deploy. And I'm going to move much of this content over. I think that's all I really need to move. I'll leave this comparer up in case I want other stuff from it. My scene base just puts ground cover on the ground and puts material on it. And I think it's just one parcel. except their scene.json file, which I did not overwrite, says 4 parcels. So I guess one of the things I can do is just go into the rather than stopping the scene, I'm going to go in this way to get this thing open. I'm using my ground cover module, and I'm saying I want something that's 16 by 16. Let's make it 32. Actually, let's make it 35. It's too big, right? Three meters too big on the north and east. And it resized, it reloaded it, and I think I'll have a little piece of ground cover sticking beyond the scene definition here. And I guess you can see it over here too, on the south border. It is sticking to the east too far. Okay, and let's see what happens. I mean, clearly the DCL start didn't complain. Let me start the DCL start over again, just for grins, to see if it complains at this point. So currently it doesn't look to me like DCL start pays any attention to a position boundary breaches. In the Babylon version of it, in version 5, it would have had this whole ground thing flashing blue and red. So let's try deploying it, see what happens. More stuff. It lists what the files are going to be that it's going to put up. I'm not using all those things, but it's gonna, I'm not loading them with oh, that's a good point. If you have stuff in your directories that you're not using, like in your models directory or something, and they're really not part of your scene, but they're there for some other reason, like you copied, like I did, too much stuff, or you were using them and you decided not to have them in your scene, you can prune them out of your scene, take them out of the directories of the scene. When you're using GitLab, of course, you can always go back and say, give it back to me. You can revert or just go pull the file again. But the scene just will deploy faster and probably perform a little faster for people if it doesn't have a bunch of junk in it. In any case, I say yes here. I should get a pop-up for signing. So far, it hasn't complained. It says complete, but it hasn't given me my cursor back yet. So I'm not sure what it's doing during this time, but I just assume it's not fully deployed. And somewhere I think I had a window with the world in it, maybe not. Okay, so the scene was at -5.3, so go. Well, that's one possible solution. It just won't deploy it. It won't render it. Let's see if that's the reason why it doesn't. Let's go back to scene and make these 32 so that it doesn't extend out of the scene. See if that was the reason. So maybe if you break the rules, it just won't show. It's a reasonable solution, although it's not real explanatory. You know, actually, let me hit F12 on this window and see if it says, it's interesting. It's, oh, those things are neighboring scenes. If there's anywhere up here that says, some of these warnings and errors are normal. There's not a single warning there that tells you that the reason was because it was too big. But let me save this. Oops, save it and redeploy. Does anybody remember what the scene height limitation is for a 4-parcel scene? Signing it? We can go look that up. I want to put the cube up put something up too high in the scene and see if it also makes it not work.
I think it's roughly 80 meters.
Yeah, it certainly isn't going to be more than that. It's 20 for 1. So if we put something at 90 meters, we should be able to see what happens. Oops, I'm sitting watching nothing. Deployment complete. So if we reload this, no, there's something else is the issue here. What is it? You know, it's possible it doesn't want you to put something right at the edge. I have never really checked that out. I'm making it a little bit smaller and pushing it slightly, you know, a 1/10 of a meter north and east, and making it small enough to definitely fit in the scene. See if that's what it is. I'm wondering if there's anything else here that seemed to be the problem. There's no errors in this code. I'm do a local preview first and make sure that I haven't made something really dumb. I don't think that's it, because I think the builder scenes put things right to the edge. So I have a little margin here and I have almost a meter margin at the top. Yep. So now may have just discovered a bug because I deployed a bad scene there before. It doesn't tell me how big the scene is I'm deploying, although, and it doesn't say it here either. It just says what the corner. It gives me 1 parcel, probably the base parcel. I'm not sure. See here? Yes, so Control F5. Oh, that's interesting. Is that actually some road on my land? Maybe that's no, but we deployed something here before. Let me go back to I'm gonna make a new scene that just says the one that we know works. And I have to change the scene.json. Let's just start by deploying this scene to that same parcel. So if I go over here to this guy, I'm going to take this stuff from the scene part of that one. Put it here. But I'm going to treat it as a one parcel scene first. Save. Let's I use the -B just to recycle that window, that browser pane. Before we deploy this, I want to also, oh, interesting. Where did it put me? Did I not save that file that I edited? Scene demo deploy to parcel base. Is that a syntax error here? Doesn't say so. Oh, interesting issues today. Where am I? It didn't pick it up this time. Interesting, huh? So I'm at -5, -133. So it's not consistent. Oh, silly me. I reloaded the scene. I didn't make it do a DCL start. DCL start would have passed that through. So that was just me. Okay, so it's a one parcel scene here. And let's do a DCL deploy from here. Oops. Control F5. Aha. I suspect that the bug was when I deployed an invalid scene that I somehow may have interfered with my ability to upload to the scene. So be careful about that. I'll report that as a possible bug or explore it a bit more. Anybody seen this before? I don't understand what I'm seeing here at the corner. So the road does actually maybe overlap a little bit onto my land. Let's just for grins try deploying it a little bit to the northwest east of that, which would be, I'm just put it up in the upper right corner instead. So -4, -132. Now it's showing it in the upper right corner here.
Carl, so I actually just went to your scene.
Yeah.
And I do see the rotating cube in there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe if you have to sign out of the Explorer and then sign back in order to see it.
Or do a deeper reload or something. Oh, that's interesting to know. I'm very relieved, actually. I would hate to see that uploading invalid scene invalidates your ability to upload scenes. So let me go back to the, that's here. I have not deployed the new scene to the upper right corner. So that's, you're seeing it here. Are you standing here?
Yeah, I don't have an avatar created yet, so that's probably.
Well, you will show up as a guest. So we're definitely not in the same session. Let me do a Control F5 here. I'm going to try to experiment what you said, but first let me try out something lighter, which is just reloading a scene. I may go back and deploy that first scene with the grass and see if it, okay, so I'm just going to sit here for a moment and see if it just is taking a long time to deploy. I mean, to render, which wouldn't make sense. All this other stuff rendered very quickly. But it rendered so quickly that I think it must be from my cache. Let me try, oh, do you know how to log out? I don't.
I don't actually. It always asks me to sign in every time I try to get into it.
Yeah.
Your browser history.
It did not ask me that today. It asked me that yesterday. Did I log in today? I don't think I did. Not to be daunted. Let's try Firefox. It's nice to have like 3 or 4 different browsers you can use to solve problems like this.
And it is kind of funny with the rotating cube. You know how when you click it, you spawn on it, and it widens the original cube. It actually widens over everybody else's parcels.
Yeah. I think they don't have the limits in place yet. Hmm. And you have logged in today?
Yeah, I just logged in.
So you and I are both logged in and looking at this 5. Oh, it's supposed to be -5, isn't it? Is it -5?
Yeah, it's -5.
Oh, that, the last about half an hour has been wasted because I had 5 here. Sorry, it looks just the same. Ember caught this earlier. Yes, indeed. So now let's go back to our other scene. Oh, but you pointed out this fact that it doesn't seem to mind extending things out of the scene. So let's go back to the one with the too much grass. See if it catches it at deploy time. Indeed. Okay. So and this has me at negative. Okay. Make sure all this stuff is right. You know what? Let me just raise this up a little bit because it might stick under their road otherwise. So maybe instead what I'll do, yeah, let's just go ahead and try this. I think it might still be visible. I know the other thing I can do is to make it thicker. This is a ground cover module I have, which really tries to put it on the ground, but I can make it a thick ground cover. Plate. I'll start. Make sure that it's reasonable. That ground cover module is one of the ones that's available in my public GitLab stuff. It can also do paths inside parcels. If you walk around the conference center, you'll see the result of that. Some of the parcels have a terracotta tile. Yes, there's a thick ground cover. Thick enough I have to jump to get onto it. Okay, so it should definitely show in that other scene, even if their road is thick. No complaints yet. Often I sit here for a minute or two wondering like what happens next, and this is just off the bottom and you don't see it. Then you go back here and yes, it did complete. So now if I go to, not to the preview, but if I go to Explorer at this coordinates here, I see a comment from Ember in the, I was going to mention this, in the chat. It is true that dynamically generated change in the scene is only seen by the person doing it. So we have many copies of G here. Excuse me for running through you. It looks like it allowed me to write right over the top of their, I think there was supposed to be a road here, right? That looks right, but I have written all the way up to several meters over their road. So it looks like they're not enforcing the boundary limitations right now. They will, I'm sure, eventually, because people will be writing on each other's scenes otherwise. I would suggest that you stay within your parcel when you work in the sandbox. You're not writing on junk over other people's parcels. But of course, you can always play around with trying to see what happens with your neighbor. And then, what was I going to say here, though? Oh, yes. The only way that dynamic changes in a scene would be seen by other players is if you coordinated the scenes through an external signaling server. Decentraland has one for essentially, a signaling server for chat and to see each other's avatars, but that's all it does right now. Maybe that's all it'll ever do. They do have some sample scenes, like the, I think it's called Remote Door or something like that. There's a couple of sample scenes that demonstrate the use of a server running somewhere, a simple JavaScript Node.js server that can answer questions about what state things are in and can store state that's being written to it by. So if somebody, say, moves a block, your scene code could send the new block position to the signaling server, and everybody else's scene would be polling for that in the update of a system and moving the things around correspondingly. You could use that to start music for everybody at the same time, start animations at the same time for everybody. If you don't do that, the animation, sound, and movements of things are, and the instantiation of new things like clicking on the box and having it make more boxes, that's only going to be seen by you. There's another comment here. Yes, Ember is right that if you're already in a scene in the world and you or somebody else deploys new content to that scene, you won't see it until next time you res that scene. If you're in it, you would need to reload. I'm not sure what happens if you're far away and come to it from a distance. It might not have been in, it might not be loaded, and therefore you probably will see it. That's not a sound effect in the scene. That actually is a cat that's begging me for some snacks. Okay. We didn't try the height limitation, but my guess is they're just not enforcing limitations right now. I'll tell you one limitation they are, is a hint for a later lesson. They are enforcing that texture maps are the right sizes. So they've long said that texture maps need to be 512 by 512 or some smaller power of 2 square, like 256 by 256. They have never officially said that they're supporting larger squares. I currently have scenes in the world that have 1024 by 1024. I mean, Esteban said 512 is really not enough. He acknowledged that for the looks that we want. So I think they're still allowing 1024, and I'm guessing that they will continue to do so, but I don't know that. So if you're making models that have textures, or if you're using textures to apply to primitives, I would suggest storing both in your library, both 512 and 1024. But and you probably can use 1024 right now, but I wouldn't count on it staying. But if you use something like 1024 by 2000, it will not work properly. I can tell you that. So a clue for a later lesson assignment. Any other questions? About anything? Anything you're working on that you're having troubles with, or anything you want to share with your fellow students? So I see two things here that are worth noting. One is that they have hooked up, if you have created an avatar, they have hooked up the appearance of your custom avatar to your in-world presence now. And a week ago, name tags weren't working in-world reliably, but now they are. So, and as you can see, if you open up multiple instances of your browser, you can log in more than once if you have enough capacity in your computer to handle that. So I am wondering why this version of is Hie, or however, I'm sorry, I do not know how you pronounce your name. It's actually standing under the ground, but some are standing on the ground. Interesting. We know that the ground is thick. Maybe it doesn't have a collider on it, but then why are you standing on the ground? Interesting. Oh, maybe you're standing on a cube. Ah. Oh, it takes a little while for them to go away. They've all disappeared from me now, except for one that's standing. I can't tell if she's standing on. He does seem to be walking on top of the ground where some people aren't. That's very interesting. Don't understand it. Mystery. Walk off the edge. Do you drop down? Is the edge up higher here, actually? It is a little bit. Oh, interesting. As you walked toward the edge, you were in the ground again before you got to the edge. You have to jump to get up on it, right? And then turn around, walk back again off the edge. You walk down. You actually, your feet go down into it when it gets to the other scene that I'm overlapping. Very interesting. Okay. Unless there's any other questions, I think I'm going to wrap for today. This has been fun. And I will try to get you your land allocations. I'm going to start working on it as soon as the class is over. And I will go back and re-upload the previous videos. I figured out that I could render them at a higher resolution in the editor. It's still not quite as good as the original, but it is legible. So, all right. Thank you very much, everybody.